another early project for the work that I did on energy. The first one was the Chevron project in Perth Amboy, New Jersey. And here, although there were some planting and buffers that I worked on, the interesting thing to me was that they let me come up with a color palette for the entire refinery. And instead of trying to make it pure, I tried to make some soft colors which would blend with the environment. I invented a color called dawn gray. The air quality at that time in Perth Amboy, New Jersey was not so perfect, and the color of the sky was more dawn gray. And so I painted various parts of the refinery in dawn gray, and then just some of them were decorative, detailed pieces was a dark gray, a sort of charcoal gray, and then a third gray for some of the structures. And the interesting thing about that was it was hard to get my palette approved because Chevron is owned by a California company, and they had all these jazzy California colors, and that was their standard, and they started to insist that I use their standard California colors. And so I had to go through, a lot of negotiations about why dawn gray and related colors were better for Perth Amboy, and in fact they finally did use that color palette. So in addition to the oil refineries, and we did several, there was another interesting energy challenge. That was the work at the Bell site on Lake Cayuga. And this work, of course, came from a lot of new regulations where when large refineries or power plants were expanding, they had to respond and protect the environment and the public. This particular site, the Bell site on Lake Cayuga, they had started to do excavation for an extension of the power plant, which could be either nuclear or fossil. In New York, there was a law that you had to have an alternative so that they could choose which one they wanted. But before that law was actually enacted, they started excavating, and they ripped the site up and did a lot of blasting. And then they had to be brought before the authorities, and I, as I did in Chevron for Perth Amboy, had to give testimony at various hearings. And in this case, they not only had an alternative power source for design, but they also had to have an alternative site. The other site was on Lake Ontario, which is a much bigger lake than poor little Lake Cayuga. So in my testimony, I felt that the power plant on Lake Ontario would do less. I mean, my specialty was visual character and quality, and I thought Lake Ontario site, and I went there and visited it, would not cause as much visual impact as the one on Lake Cayuga would. And so after that testimony, the board chose the Ontario site. The power company took me to dinner and gave me the job of restoring the site on Lake Cayuga, and we restored it to a natural meadow landscape, which I hope is just going through the normal process of becoming forest again.